find out more by calling for my free DVD now.
Call 1-800-221-4966 now to receive your free DVD featuring Fred Thompson.
Find out how much cash you may qualify for. Call AAG today.
Call 1-800-221-4966 now for your free DVD and brochure featuring Fred Thompson. 1-800-221-4966.
You know what value is? It's being able to afford a clean, comfortable room at Motel 6 when you visit your relatives instead of staying at their house. Can't put a price on that. I'm Tom Bodette from Motel 6, and we'll leave the light on for you.
In my life, I am a CNN hero.
CNN heroes find solutions.
I help women come home from prison. When someone helped me, it made all the difference.
Do you know a hero? Nominate today at cnnheroes.com.
In my life.
Sponsored by Johnson & Johnson, the campaign for nursing's future.
In my life.
Jack Cafferty's here with the Cafferty File. Jack.
In case you haven't heard, of course you've heard, but in case you haven't heard, there is a pretty big to-do planned for tomorrow on the other side of the pond, where Prince William will marry Kate Middleton in Westminster Abbey tomorrow in London. It's the first high-profile royal wedding in Britain in decades, and you cannot turn on a television, open a newspaper, log onto a website without hearing all about it. All the big U.S. broadcast and cable networks, including CNN, will carry the event live with coverage beginning at 4 o'clock Eastern Time tomorrow morning. The wedding itself begins a couple of hours later. So it's a really big deal, right? Not so much. A poll in Britain commissioned by an anti-monarchy group found 4 out of 5 Britons are, quote, largely indifferent or couldn't care less, unquote, about the royal wedding. Really? They're not even excited about watching it, and it's going to be on in the middle of their workday, and it's their royal family, and it's happening in their country. So what about Americans? Do we really care enough to get up at 4 in the morning and watch a wedding on a workday? A New York Times CBS News poll found only 6% of Americans say they've been following news about the royal wedding very closely, and 22% say somewhat closely. So once again, not so much. Could be a real letdown for the U.S. media spending a boatload of money to cover this thing, but Prince William is not our future king, and people on both sides of the Atlantic Ocean apparently have other things to worry about. Anyway, here's the question. How excited are you about the royal wedding? Go to cnn.com/CaffertyFile and post a comment on my blog.
Jack, you know, it's a fascinating thing. The 3% or 6% that are really, really interested, watch this video. I don't know what this video is. What is this video?
I don't know.
These are, let me see, I'll tell you, it's some video of a crowd in central London today, folks shaking hands. Tomorrow, by the way, this is Prince William. Oh, that's what it is. We're just getting this video in right now. Some people are excited. The people who are really excited, Jack, about this wedding, 3%, 6%, or whatever that number was, they are really excited. 90% not so excited, but the 3% or 6% are very, very excited, and they will be glued to their TVs, no doubt about that.
Indeed. I will not be among them, however.
Yeah, a lot of people, still be a lot of people out there. You know, but you know what? They should.
Are you going to get up and watch it?
No, but I'm sure a lot of people will get up and watch.
I'm sure that.
I'll get up a little earlier and watch probably the tail end.
Well, and those of us who don't get up at 4 in the morning will be able to see this thing replayed ad nauseum all day tomorrow.
Oh, yeah. We'll get the 3-minute highlights, which will be fun.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. Let's move on to some other news right now. If you've been to the gas station lately, chances are you're feeling some big pain at the pump. Today, one major oil company is reporting huge profits while getting some huge tax breaks in the process. What is going on? We asked Mary Snow to take a closer look. Mary?
Well, get this, ExxonMobil reported a 69% spike in its quarterly earnings. That's thanks in part to higher oil prices. And big oil profits are at the heart of a political fight over whether they should be getting big tax breaks. Stunned motorists discovered gas prices topping $4 a gallon in some places. Oil giant ExxonMobil reports it earned an eye-popping $11 billion in just the first 3 months of this year alone. It comes as President Obama wants to cut tax breaks to oil companies amounting to roughly $4 billion a year. Republicans say it's not the time to slap on taxes. What are these multi-billion-dollar breaks? We asked tax law expert Professor Michael Gratz of Columbia Law School.
Well, the rules are terribly arcane. They're terribly complex. I don't try and teach them to my students in a basic income tax class.
One goes back to 1916 that Gratz says allows oil companies to deduct roughly 70% of the costs of creating a well that produces oil. A more current one came in 2004, called the Domestic Manufacturing Deduction, a tax break for manufacturing at home rather than abroad. Eliminating it, says the left-leaning think tank Center for American Progress, would save the government $1.7 billion a year. Another tax break, says Gratz, dates back to the 1950s Cold War era, when President Eisenhower was trying to sway Saudi Arabia into the U.S. camp rather than the Soviets. The U.S. allowed an accounting change so U.S. drillers no longer paid royalties to the Saudis, but taxes, which they could claim as tax credits at home.
And by treating them as taxes, they offset U.S. taxes dollar for dollar, whereas a royalty would only be deductible against U.S. taxes and save the company 35 cents on the dollar.
Bottom line, U.S. companies can claim a 100% deduction. With oil companies making billions, do they really need these tax breaks as incentives? We asked Brian Johnson with the American Petroleum Institute, which represents the industry. He says the tax breaks encourage production and create jobs. And he says if the government wants more revenues, it should allow more production and drilling.
That's really where our focus needs to be, is on increased access, not nitpicking these little issues to try and raise money in the short term and using political rhetoric. We need to focus on increased access.
With these profits comes public anger, and as ExxonMobil reported its earnings, it's also firing back at critics. It said it paid $9.8 billion in U.S. taxes last year. Here's how it's broken down. It amounts to $1.6 billion in income tax, U.S. income tax, $6.2 billion in sales taxes, and $2 billion in other taxes such as property taxes. But Wolf, Fortune magazine lists ExxonMobil as one of the 10 companies with the most untaxed foreign income, since this makes most of its money overseas.
So whatever it pays in so-called taxes to the Saudis, it could, dollar for dollar, it doesn't have to pay to the American Treasury. So last year they made a profit of how much, ExxonMobil, for example?
It was one of the highest in 2008. I remember something like $35 billion.
And it's going to be a lot more last year, and then this year even more. But what you're saying in terms of income tax, they paid $1.6 billion.
For 2010. Now in 2009, we take a look, and it paid about $15 billion in international taxes. This was back in 2009, but none in U.S. income taxes.
Yeah, which is sort of like General Electric. They make $14 billion a year around the world, $5 billion profit. So just profit in the United States. They pay zero income tax to the federal government. It looks like ExxonMobil pays some money out to other countries like the Saudis, but very little to the U.S. Treasury, and then on top of that, they get, billions of dollars in tax subsidies from the American taxpayers. It's going to cause a huge uproar in this debate to try to lower the deficit, struggle with that budget deficit. The oil industry is going to, I assume, going to wind up paying more in taxes down the road, but we shall see. Mary, thanks very much. The U.S. has spared no expense to recruit Pakistan as a critical ally, but parts of that country remain a haven for Taliban fighters, al-Qaeda operatives. Is Washington throwing good money after bad? I'll speak about it live. Pakistan's ambassador to the United States, Hussein Haqqani, he's here in the Situation Room. We'll also go back to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, where dozens of people are dead, buildings are leveled, piles of rubble stretch for blocks. CNN is there.
A song by Paul Beckman. Paul Beckman song created April 28, 2011, using guitar chords. A7 and D minor. The song is going to be called Houses Completely Leveled. Well, houses completely leveled, that's what we saw for block upon block, flying through the air with that airplane view of it all. Tornadoes hit, they made a switch, a swatch, a swath of destruction. Well, now aren't you glad you weren't in the path? And if you were and you survived, well, imagine that. Well, let's hope that you live a long life natural. You live to be 100 or 103. Well, let's hope that you have lots of love in your life, and if you have to go soon, and you don't know it, but life has another fate. Let's hope that you can fill your life with everything you like, everything, everyone you love. And if you go, and if you have to go, that's it. In a blink, you never know. What if you were sleeping at 10 o'clock and the tornado comes and you're asleep in bed? Suddenly you're having a life, you're in the prime of your life, and then a second later, oh my God, you're dead. Well, count your lucky stars that we're alive and we see devastation, destruction. Well, now be wise. You can never plan for all things, especially the inevitable. Let's hope that all our destinies are tied. Well, let's hope you're not one of the unlucky ones or unfortunates who overnight becomes homeless and a refugee. There are two kinds of wars. There's wars of man, humankind, and then there's nature's catastrophe. Well, for one, we might be exempt if we're living in a country that's a little better, a little more stable, and a little more secure with freedom, like the West. But what if you were one of the victims of one of the latest storms that have come and left?